So, good afternoon, Eric. Thanks for chatting to us today. So, the first question is one we, of course, always like to start with: is who is Graybar, and what do you guys do for the K through 12 education, the school districts?
Yeah, well, thanks, Ian. So Graybar, first and foremost, is a distributor of both electrical and communications components. We're one of the largest in the country. So we're able to provide all the materials that go into one of these types of projects. So that's kind of a baseline piece. But what's the really important part? The projects can be complex. There's a lot of different entities that are involved in providing that solution. And ultimately, what that does is it makes for the opportunity for errors and mistakes to happen that any school district is going to want to avoid. And those come around. How do I evaluate which integrator should I work with? Which services provider should I have? Which technology and equipment is the best for my particular situation? And so, what we're expert in doing is really navigating that entire ecosystem and working with our customers, really understanding what are the very specific goals that they're trying to get to, what are the specific requirements they have, and even the environment that they're operating in, and how can we take technology and the various partners in the ecosystem and pull that together in a very custom way to help solve their particular problem, help them to simplify the process and avoid making mistakes as they go down that path.
Okay, great. So, when it comes to private networks with the school districts and K through 12 in particular, what have you seen as being some of the main applications, services, some of the use cases that the top ones that come to mind that you've seen out there?
Yeah, so the primary application today is solving for the digital divide. We've got so many students, and this became so very apparent during COVID, but obviously this has existed long before that and existing long afterwards. But we had all the students that were out of class and needed access to do Zoom calls like we're doing today, but didn't have that basic internet access to be able to do that. But beyond even the Zoom calls, to be able to do research and homework on your own time, you've got to have that internet access at your home. And so many kids either don't have the means to get that internet access, or it's not even available where they're at a minimum amount of capability to function and to be able to do that on par with other kids in the same school. And so many schools now are looking for how can we most cost effectively over the long term provide that internet access to those kids. And so that really is the number one application that we are delving into today, is utilizing a wireless network as kind of that last mile connectivity as an internet service provider to those that don't have it. However, as you go out and deploy that wide area network, it opens up lots of other opportunities to utilize that network. So one of them that we're absolutely looking at is the school buses and providing connectivity on the buses. So as we have that network, we can now provide a Wi-Fi access point on the bus and let the kids have that Wi-Fi access on the school bus to do their homework and other productive activities, hopefully while they're on that bus. But we can also then provide a better level of security. So how about having a security camera that's on the bus? Now, a lot of schools are doing that already, but they don't necessarily have real-time access to that camera on the bus. So you can go and have that real-time access to see what's happening as maybe you're talking to the bus driver, which of course that's another application, is the ability to do two-way radio access. So that's a bus. You could see that happening, whether it's the day-to-day back and forth to school or even out on a field trip. Now you may pair that with some commercial cellular access in order to transition as you move outside of the boundaries of the school district. But as you do that on a bus, you could also look at other types of staff and fleet vehicles and having that connectivity as they're moving out and about across the district using the same network.
Right. And I assume the schools themselves will be covered as well by the network. So the same security cameras, access control, solutions like that around the building, even smart lighting and things like this, HVAC control all apply as well, just as they would in a commercial building, right?
Absolutely, and I've got a school district we're working with right now. As we move out of the 4G technology and into 5G, they want to utilize that same network to enable their esports program for that connectivity. And you need the low latency that's available in 5G in order to do that effectively. So yeah, I mean, there's no end to what we'll eventually be able to do. It's about getting that network in place. And you know, one thing that's real interesting, you know, we've got kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to fund these networks today because of the federal grant money that's available out there because of COVID, honestly, right? But it's to help us solve a problem that's gonna endure well into the future.
Right, right. You know, you reminded me when you talk about homework. My daughter, who's a teacher, by the way, now, but when she was younger, she used to think it was called homework because you had to get the work done before you got home. So, and my son actually picked up the same practice, so it was great. We never had to force the kids to do anything. It was great. So, um, so obviously when the school district's looking at a private network, you know, there's a lot of complexities, it looks like, from the outside, right? You've got the devices, you've got the network, you've got the design of the network, you've got the integration, you've got the installation, obviously there's the funding. How, when you're talking to a school district, how do you recommend they get started? What are the first few steps to get the process going, so that, you know, they don't overcomplicate it, but and actually move forward and get something executed?
Yeah, so I mean, really, those first steps are a lot of introspection, asking a lot of questions of yourself to understand where you're at. So you mentioned the network and the devices, and those are really, really important. But there's a third piece that you have to look at, which is what's the level of digital literacy amongst those kids that you're trying to connect. And if you don't address that in addition, the whole thing can fail in a heartbeat, right? You can hand out a bunch of laptops to people, but if they don't know how to use them or they're afraid of them, you know, you're not going to get anywhere, right? Or you send out the laptops without the network, you know, they don't have access. It's the same problem. So first and foremost, I want to mention that the digital literacy is a really important part of the equation here. But beyond that, you have to start looking and saying, all right, number one, do I, over the long haul, because again, if we agree that this is a problem that's not going away anytime soon, this access to internet, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to rent or do we want to own this capability? So a lot of school districts during COVID immediately went out and got commercial carrier services, mobile hotspots and things like that, or maybe they went with a cable provider that offered some cut rate services to those students, and those were really kind of short-term programs. But once you've given those mobile hotspots out, that is a recurring monthly expense that is never going away, that never provides any ownership.
Mhm.
And people haven't necessarily budgeted for that, and you can blow through your grant funding just paying for monthly services. But what do I do, you know, in 2 or 3 years from now? And so you got to decide: is that the path we're on, or do we really need to own the network? And again, I think this is the opportunity that's in front of the school district today, is to actually own the infrastructure, have that investment in something that they can leverage. Are there operational expenses going forward? Of course they are, but they're far less than what you might pay for those services coming from another provider.
Mhm.
Um, Beyond that, then you start to look at, you know, physical things. Do we have a place where we can mount transmitters? Is there fiber access? Are our schools all interconnected by fiber? Is you know, a certainly important piece, because you know we can mount transmitters up on the roof of a school or put up a tower there, you know, and broadcast from those locations as long as we've got fiber access. And you want to look at how densely populated is the area that I'm in? How far out are the students from the school property? Within a certain range, we can cover them with wireless. We may have some students that are outside of the range, and we may not be able to serve in this way without going to a lot greater expense. And so there's a lot of things like that that you want to consider in terms of just the physical environment and the supporting infrastructure.
Right. So from your perspective, then the school can own the equipment, but then have some other services on top of that to enable for the operations and things. And then what about devices as well? Are they typically leased? Are they owned, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, so the devices, you know, not too dissimilar from what a lot of schools are doing today, where they're handing out Chromebooks to all the kids
Right.
already, right? And so we wouldn't want to change those devices. It really becomes more a matter of what's the intermediary device. So a lot of the Chromebooks today are not going to be able to take that CBRS or private LTE signal today and take it directly. They need Wi-Fi or an Ethernet connection. And so really what you're providing in terms of devices are gateways for a lot of those, for that access. So I can get a gateway device that the district can own. It could even be connected to an external antenna. So if we don't deliver coverage inside the home, we can put an antenna outside the home, connect that to that gateway device. And that gateway device is going to give you an Ethernet port you can plug into, and it can also create a local Wi-Fi network, which of course is then it's easy access for your existing complement of devices that you have.
Right. So to the students, it looks just like a Wi-Fi connection, but it's providing reliable service, perhaps where they hadn't had it before.
Reliable service. And I mentioned the renting services from the commercial carrier earlier. Those are pretty much open internet access. They don't have the same kind of controls to the internet that you have when you're inside the school property. But when you extend this wireless network out from the school's network, I can affect those same controls and policies over that access.
Yeah. Because we are building a private wireless network here, where the private means it's within the school district and they control access to that.
That's right. So it makes it a much safer experience for the kids ultimately.
Right. All right. Well, Eric, thanks very much. Good talking to you as always. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate the opportunity.